To the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today's Monday, December the 8th. Zach Ewing here with Wilson Alexander and Scott Rabelais covering the LSU football team for The Advocate. We are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. And we've got a week's worth of Lane Kiffin now, Wilson. And a lot. He's accomplished a lot in a week, I have to say.
He's been very productive. It's been a busy week for over there at Football Ops. Rab, can you think of a maybe more happening within 1 week? I don't know. It's hard to put a time frame on it, but within the past 5 years.
Well, with the coaching change and the signing day right on top of that and everything,
With retaining your defensive coordinator and bringing in your offensive staff.
The staff, it's been a lot. It does seem like a lot. So I would have to agree that it is a lot of activity.
I mean, it had to be, right? Like he was put in a situation where this is why the whole, Ole Miss in the playoff versus coming down to LSU is an issue, because you have to come in and build your staff and you have to mess with early signing day. And we're seeing like John Summerall at Tulane's having to do that at Florida. I think he coached Tulane Friday night and then went immediately to Gainesville, and now is going to have to come back to New Orleans to coach Tulane in the playoff. And like, it is difficult to do that. So that's why it was probably good for all parties involved that Lane Kiffin was here. But he has been productive. He didn't have to have his whole staff in place in a week. He almost does. There's a few. We'll talk about a few leftovers or a few holdovers that he needs to fill. But he's also kind of retained the top two recruits in his recruiting class. As you mentioned, kept Blake Baker and just sort of generally hit the ground running here. So we will talk about all of that. We do want to let you know, first off, that we are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. You can command the road in a Cadillac where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. So I think that the headlining thing here is Blake Baker. Since the last time we talked anyway. We talked about some of this last week, including the recruiting, and we'll get to that. But Blake Baker, for 12 hours, 18 hours, Wilson looked like he was headed to be the head coach at Tulane. That was there were some reports out there.
Tulane thought he was headed to be the next head coach at Tulane.
Yeah, in fact, I have it on pretty good authority. Tulane had a press release that was like ready to go. I mean, they never released it, obviously, but they thought he was coming. Blake Baker had other ideas.
This guy, from the beginning, thought he was going to stay.
That's right.
I was sweating it out there for a second. I was like, oh, man, maybe I went a little bit. Maybe I was worried that I did the one thing that I always try not to do during a coaching search, which is make premature predictions or and get too far out over your skis, because you never know where those things are going to go. But, yeah, from the beginning, I had talked to some people close to Blake and just felt like he kind of wanted to stay at LSU. And then LSU ultimately made it make financial sense. So, he's repped by Jimmy Sexton. And so I think Jimmy Sexton was able to get on board once LSU offered him a 3-year, $9.3 million contract extension that should make him the highest paid assistant coach in the country next year. We'll see exactly, how extensions and stuff shake out, but Blake will certainly be up there. But I just, from talking to people close to him, it felt like in his gut, he didn't really want to uproot his family again. Ideally, in his mind, he would have gone to Tulane for a couple of years and then jumped to a Power 4 job. So, yeah, you could have had a chance to be a head coach, but he would have tried to probably take the John Summerall route and probably wouldn't have been there all that long. He loves his alma mater, but it's not where he ultimately wants to be a head coach for the remainder of his career. He's 43. He's got a long, time ahead of him, hopefully, and so he thinks that he can take more of the Power 4 coordinator to Power 4 head coach route. And so I think that's why once the money lined up and LSU was offering what it was, it made a lot of sense for him just to stay.
Yeah, he may have been making less than that had he taken the head coaching job at Tulane. John Summerall, Tulane's private, so we don't know for sure, but John Summerall was reportedly making around $3 million a year after signing an extension last year at Tulane. And so Blake Baker, as maybe less accomplished as a head coach certainly than Summerall, maybe wasn't getting that offer. Instead, he gets $3 million plus from LSU. Kind of put their money where their mouth is. And Rab, this is a big deal for LSU. Like, I think, first of all, you have holdover now from the staff, and maybe that helps retain some players. We'll see. But also, the guy's just a good defensive coordinator.
Yes, stability is always a plus when there's a coaching change because there's so much upheaval and there's so much change. So keeping him, and then I would think they can keep most of the defensive staff.
Yes, the expectation is they'll keep now Corey Raymond, Kevin Peoples, and Jake Olson. It will be interesting to see what happens with Chris Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's brother came with him. He was the linebackers coach at Ole Miss this past season. Blake Baker coached linebackers the past 2 years. They kind of got to sort out what role Chris Kiffin would have. And then the expected change is that defensive line coach, that interior defensive line coach. LSU is expected to hire Elijah Robinson away from Syracuse, the former Texas A&M assistant. That hasn't. I don't know yet as we're recording this if it's been fully finalized yet, but that's the expectation. And because Kyle Williams was, from what we understand, is going to step away after one season, coming back. Just maybe wasn't for him to be a college defensive line coach, and so it seemed like he was going to step away after 1 year.
I think it's a good move for Lane Kiffin, and it's good news for LSU. I will say a little bit though. They spent a lot of money on this defensive staff. They could have been a little better this year. I mean, I think we thought at the beginning of the season they looked like a really dominant defense, and at times they were. I think they were in the top 15 in scoring defense, but just gave up a lot of big plays. I mean, they basically lost the Oklahoma game on a couple of big plays, and otherwise played very, very, very good defense over the course of the game. So I think that could be a little better, but obviously there's going to be a lot of personnel turnover with players on this LSU defense for next year. So we'll see how all that goes. But overall, would you rather have Blake Baker than not? Yes, I think you definitely would, and it's a plus for LSU.
I will push back on that just a little bit in that I think the defense was being put in bad situations over and over and over again, especially in the second half of the season.
True. Yeah, they only scored 13 points at Oklahoma. That's the flip side of that.
Right. Bad field position, bad game state where you're being forced to play from behind where the opposing offense can kind of pick and choose its spots to be aggressive and things like that. Like, I think this defense overall, I mean, just look at what it was before Blake Baker came over from Missouri, right? Like it has improved in such leaps and bounds. And some of that is personnel. LSU obviously spent a lot of money on personnel on the defensive side of the ball last year. But part of it also undeniably is Baker and his staff, Wilson.
Yeah, they have that aggressive style, which sometimes can lead to giving up big plays. Yes. Because if you have an offense that can take advantage of that and expose you in man coverage, if you don't necessarily have people in the right position, or if there's some miscommunication, like I think there was on that touchdown, the game-winning touchdown at Oklahoma, then you can leave yourself exposed. But they do have to continue to get better, to your point. I mean, they were a top 25 defense this season, top 15 in scoring. Their stop rate, like the percentage of drives in which the team did not score anything, was like, I think 11th in the country. So like much better, to Zach's point, than they were 2 years ago. You've made a lot of strides, but they do need to continue to get better because you want to, especially against running quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, you don't want to have a Texas A&M game or a Vanderbilt game again like you did this year. But there was, I think there's a margin for improvement. But you are now, I think you can say that LSU has a very good defense this year. And now you need to try to take that next step toward being great and like elite, like Ohio State, Georgia, kind of what we saw this year out of them, Indiana, Texas
Oklahoma.
Tech. Yeah. Like you can still keep getting better. And now they need to take that step here in the offseason.
Right. Okay. So that is the defensive coordinator in place. And as you mentioned, Corey Raymond and company also likely to be retained. Elijah Robinson was not finalized. It's a pretty good get. I mean, he's an experienced guy. He was actually the interim coach at Texas A&M after Jimbo Fisher was fired in the 2023 season. Actually coached against LSU in that game, I believe, in Tiger Stadium.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm just one of these people who thinks the more experience you can pour onto a staff like this, the better. It
does continue, though, the turnover at the defensive line coach at LSU. It's the defense against the dark arts position from Harry Potter. There's a new one every single year. I mean, it's really, once again, LSU is going to have a new defensive line coach, which is hard to fathom. It's like every team has like some kind of chronic Achilles heel. I think maybe this one is LSU's. Like well, you could point to a lot of them in the past few years being Achilles heels, but like they just can't seem to keep a defensive line coach. But now maybe now with Elijah Robinson, you'll have somebody you can just keep around for a few years. He's known for his recruiting and his development. He got guys like Walter Nolan to Texas A&M. Of course, Nolan ended up later transferring after Elijah Robinson left to Ole Miss. And so Ole Miss's coaches saw probably up close what someone like him can do a little bit. And I think it's a good hire, and hopefully he can finally give LSU some stability there at that spot.
How many open spots are left? We don't know what Chris Kiffin will coach, but we assume he'll be on the staff. What are they still looking for?
Well, really, you're looking for a running backs coach and a special teams coordinator, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, Frank Wilson, who was the running backs coach, but that's
uncertain whether or not he will be back in that role. Lane Kiffin certainly wanted to bring Kevin Smith with him from Ole Miss. Kevin Smith has not come. We'll see maybe if LSU tries to make a run at him again when Ole Miss's playoff run ends.
He could potentially stay at Ole Miss.
Yeah. And so then maybe that kind of, if he stays, then maybe Frank Wilson has that spot, or maybe they still re-sign. I don't know. That's all very uncertain at the moment.
But I think, again, after just a week to be in a spot where you only have the 2 openings left, pretty good for Lane Kiffin. I mean, to have accomplished all that in 1 week.
Oh, very much so. Think back to 4 years ago when we were doing this the last time. It took Brian Kelly over a month to build out his staff. You were waiting on, I remember it was around Christmas or New Year's when they hired Matt House for the DC. I mean, it took a long time, and all of a sudden, bam, within a week. I mean, it's a week ago today that Lane Kiffin was holding his introductory press conference, and now we're sitting here thinking like, okay, there's really not all that much else that needs to happen until the transfer portal opens.
I think that feeds into the narrative, the idea that people have of Brian Kelly is that, I think there's talk that he'd gone back to Notre Dame, gone back to South Bend for a time after he got the LSU job.
Oh, I can't remember now.
But I think Michael Cobble from WBRZ had a great tweet that said, all LSU fans want is a coach that works. I mean, they want more than that, obviously. They want championships, but I mean,
they want a lot more than that.
But a coach who looks like he's making the effort, and obviously it became a big controversy over the weekend. At least an ESPN generated controversy. Lane Kiffin was supposed to go to Atlanta be on College Gameday, and he canceled the appearance. He tweeted. Of course, this guy tweets out his own coaching site. Hey, Blake Baker stay.
Yeah.
He tweets out his own news. Like, okay, well, we'll just report.
I was
what Lane
joking
Kiffin
with
said.
a friend that it's like, oh man, is this almost like covering the first like Trump administration where he's just gonna like tweet out what he's doing?
Yeah,
but there were things, if you want to say Lane Kiffin was ducking the College Gameday appearance, you can say that. If you want to say that he was working, he got Blake Baker to stay. They signed two really good defensive linemen, Lamar Brown and Richard Anderson. And so, and then
Trenton Henderson and Deuce Gerald.
Yeah. So he was busy. Could he have made time for a Zoom call kind of interview? Yeah, I guess so.
But if he wanted to duck it, he wouldn't have accepted it in the first place. This is not the way you would duck an interview by saying, yes, I'll come, and then the night before being like, oh, just kidding. I think he legitimately probably got to the point where he didn't have time to fly to Atlanta.
I agree. If you want to take a dim view of Lane Kiffin, you're going to take a dim view in this over this no show. If you don't, you're going to say he's working hard to build up his staff and his team for next year, then you're going to say he did that.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with that, but there's always going to be Lane Kiffin detractors, and they're going to say the opposite.
Well, this staffing update was brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, lots of other stuff going on. You guys mentioned recruiting. We'll talk a little Lamar Brown. LSU still has a game to play. They found out where they're going for bowl season, and we'll look ahead maybe to the transfer portal as well, right after this on the LSU Insider.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional healthcare for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love. Gave me love.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone, so whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac, Zach Ewing, Wilson Alexander, and Scott Rabelais here. I didn't say that in order. He's Scott, he's Wilson. But you probably already knew that. You can find us on YouTube. The LSU Sports Insider Podcast is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Okay, Lane Kiffin has done other stuff besides just hire coaches. He kept together at least the very top of his recruiting class, and I think basically everybody LSU really wanted to keep. The last piece to that puzzle, Wilson, was Lamar Brown, the guy who was closest to home. We talked about this on Thursday with Koki and Reed, and like, I don't know that Lamar Brown was ever a threat to leave. I mean, he's made it pretty clear LSU is where he wanted to be, but until he put pen to paper on Friday, you had to at least wonder if someone else, I mean, the guy's number one D lineman in the country, he could have. If he goes to the late signing period, put it that way, then you're allowing everybody else to come in and make their pitch. And Lane Kiffin did not want that to happen.
No, certainly LSU wanted to wrap this up, and that's why really, I think when was the first time that they had a meeting with his representatives? It was either, I know Tuesday night, LSU, with Lane Kiffin, Blake Baker, Billy Glasscock, the new GM, they met with Richard Anderson's representatives for a while Tuesday night. I can't remember if the call started with Lamar's that night or Wednesday morning. Either way, like there was a lot of conversations going on, kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and by Thursday there seemed to be some buzz that he would actually sign on Friday, and obviously that's what ended up happening, very sort of quietly too. There was no ceremony or anything. All of a sudden, LSU's official, football account on Twitter just sort of releases that he is part of the class now, that they have his paperwork, he's signed, and boom, there you go. And he goes and plays in his playoff game on Friday night. And that was one of the other things, to mention Blake Baker for a second, that sort of seemed to be a sign that he might stay, was that he was participating in those conversations with the recruits and their representatives throughout the week. And one person who I spoke to, a representative of Lamar Brown, said that they were kind of under the impression Blake was staying. And that was Wednesday maybe. And so, Lamar, to get him though done during the early signing period was definitely big for the reason that you said, that you don't have to stretch this out. He's not an early enrollee, so he could have taken it into February and just taken his time. But he never decommitted. So it wasn't like there was a clear sign that he was interested in someplace else. But there were some things to work through, wanting to get to sort of know what was going on with the staff. And then, boom, there on Friday, you get not only him, you also get Deuce Geralds after Ole Miss and Georgia Tech tried to flip him late. And you hold on to Trenton Henderson after some other schools tried to flip him. So LSU's got a defensive line class with 4 top 75 recruits, headlined by Lamar Brown, who we expect to play kind of as an edge. Richard Anderson there in the middle, Deuce Gerald's there in the middle, Trenton Henderson another edge. You've got some young guys to build around in that on that defensive line that makes you pretty excited for the future.
And this is where you have to be good to be a national contender. This is, the defensive line and the offensive line obviously too is important, as we saw this year. But this is where it was with the recruiting class that got Marcus Spears and Marquise Hill and those guys. That was the basis of LSU's 2003 national championship that started LSU on this great stretch of football in the best era ever. So this was really important. And, you know with recruits, it's a crapshoot. You have 2 stars who could be great, and you have 5 stars who never pan out. So you never really know. But it's you have to go after the best players, especially in state. It's not always easiest for LSU to get the players like from a player like Lamar Brown from U-High. Sometimes they want to go away to other places, and obviously he was courted by Texas A&M. But that was clearly he wanted to say he met with Lane Kiffin Sunday night right after he arrived in town, and so credit to the staff for keeping these guys together. It could have gone much worse for LSU. They could have lost a lot more commitments than they did.
Yeah, it's not LSU's highest ranked recruiting class of all time or anything close to that, but considering the situation, I think they did very well. It's probably proof of why Lane Kiffin wanted to come to this job, because you have these kind of built-in advantages where you've got these great recruits in your own backyard who grow up dreaming of playing for LSU and things like that. I mean, that's one of the built-in advantages of this place, and they got it done. Especially, I guess continuity on the D-line coaching staff wasn't an important factor for these guys because they're getting all the recruits at that position. But I do think, considering what could have been, you got to give Lane Kiffin and his staff a pretty good grade on this.
Nick Saban was talking about this a little bit on game day on Saturday morning, how one of the things that attracted him to the LSU job was all of the talent that's in the state, and that he figured that's probably one of the things that Lane Kiffin saw and liked, and that's probably one of the things that when Lane and Nick talked about, they talked about that, what you have available to you in the state. And LSU had obviously already done a lot of work ahead of time to get these guys committed, but then now they were able to pull it across the finish line. And there were some guys who didn't end up in the class who were sort of, I think the new staff didn't necessarily want to keep in the class. They went and they got some other guys flipped from Ole Miss and such. So you end up with pretty much a similar-ish group to what you started with in a lot of ways. And now they need to go, though, and they need to – there wasn't a whole lot of offensive pieces in this class. You had some receivers. But you're going to need to go, I think, inside. They got a lot of work to do on the O-line in particular. You probably need to go and get another running back, and we'll maybe talk about that more. I don't know. Do you want to talk about it now, later, closer to the portal? They got some work to do in the portal is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, let's kind of wrap up by looking at the next month, 4 weeks for LSU, and we'll start with the bowl game because that's up first. And we can have a whole conversation about bowl. We were having a whole conversation about bowl games before we came on the air. LSU will play in the Texas Bowl for the 3rd time in 5 years. Correct. December 27th, they're going to play the University of Houston in Houston at the Texan Stadium. It's not a road game officially, but it is essentially a road game. And I don't know. It's an interesting matchup, Rab. Like I think it's probably better than some of the ones they've had in the past. Houston had a good season. The question, of course, for LSU is who is going to play. We know Frank Wilson will coach. We don't know everybody who's going to opt into playing in one extra game.
Yeah, for that first Texas Bowl and that streak you were talking about, they had so few players. The 39 scholarship players. Last year, they had a lot more players, and they beat Baylor soundly in that game. So we don't know, and it's an interesting part. Is it going to be a swan song for Frank Wilson as being on the coaching staff? Certainly, he's going to coach the bowl game. Lane Kiffin said that at his first press conference that he was not going to coach LSU in the bowl game. So that's going to be a continuation of what we had the last 4 weeks of the regular season. But we don't know. It's a huge crapshoot, but it's going to be a big challenge for LSU. I'm sure Houston's favored to win. Like I said, they're in their hometown. They're in the top 25. They had a good season, 9-3, I believe. So
I believe I saw Houston as a 3-point favorite. That could change.
I think it's a bit much to have LSU on one side, to have LSU in the Texas Bowl for the 3rd time in 5 years. The flip side of it is it's great for recruiting. It's your biggest out of state alumni base, and LSU obviously recruits Southeast Texas very heavily, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that in the Lane Kiffin era. So there's definitely advantages. It would have been nice to go somewhere else. Mississippi State's going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, so that would have been nicer. And everyone was said that she was going to the Music City Bowl. Why that changed at the last minute, I don't know, but here they are.
With all due respect to the Texas Bowl, bleh. I'm not excited about this at all. Like, there's nothing narratively that's all that interesting about this game. They're going back to the same bowl for the second year in a row, third time in the past 5 years, the second time within that stretch that you have an interim coach leading you into it, against a team that had like you said, a good season. You got former Tulane coach Willie Fritz there, but it just doesn't necessarily. I don't know. It doesn't get my juices flowing to see LSU Houston back in Houston. I'm very unenthused by this matchup and the bowl placement.
To that point, because you're right, it's not exciting. It's the same place, and I get it because the alumni base there, and even for people in Louisiana, it's a relatively easy drive. And so, even though you've been there before, a lot of people probably we'll go because it's we live in East Texas and it'll be easy to get to. But it is not a marquee matchup by any stretch. We saw yesterday quite a few teams opt out of bowl games. Kansas State and Iowa State out of the Big 12. Most notably, Notre Dame just kind of took its ball and went home after they didn't make the college football playoff. We did not see that out of the SEC. Do you think that there was ever any discussion? Would the conference just tamp that down? I mean, because LSU is the perfect candidate to be like, you know what, we're on to 2026. They didn't do that. Rab, do you think there was ever any discussion of that?
Oh, I think so. I mean, like the SEC, as we know, is very heavily involved in placing teams in bowl games, right? After the college football playoff teams, the Citrus Bowl is allowed to pick. They pick Texas to play Michigan. Well, LSU has still never played in football. I'll bring that up again. And then the next 6 bowls, the SEC, and there's a couple more. The SEC decides, who goes where. And there's the like the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think Vandy's going there. That's a little better matchup. The Gator Bowl would be nice. Like there are other bowls LSU could go to within a regional area. The Liberty Bowl, that one doesn't excite me that much either.
No, that would have been worse.
But the
I covered the Liberty Bowl once. It's cold. There's nobody there. It's no.
The Gator Bowl I think would be great. Would be
That was my pick, but that was for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
Florida Bowls have a little more cachet, but no, I think the SEC probably works harder than other conferences to keep schools in line and say, to borrow a line from the movie 8 Men Out, you'll play, Jackson, you'll play.
You've also got the SEC ESPN tie-ins where I think the SEC is it also suits their interests to make sure teams are playing in these games that are usually appearing on ESPN.
But I don't want to, at the same time, I don't want to put down on the people who run the Texas Bowl or the city of Houston or stuff like that. There are people who support it. They get out and sell tickets every year, and they got a sponsor, and they're working hard to make it a good game and make it fun for people to come to and for the players. So I hope it's a success, but certainly hope. And obviously, look, LSU, if they want a better postseason destination, they got to play better, right? They got to win more games. So you could be Ole Miss and be hosting a playoff game, instead.
And that is the goal under Lane Kiffin. I think LSU got really tired of going to these sort of mid-tier bowl games year after year, and it's part of the reason why fan interest started to wane in the middle of this season when he lost 3 of 4, and when the administrators were looking up in the crowd and seeing empty seats and just a general restlessness, and again going back to games like this that you cut ties and made a change.
Yeah, I mean, it's a professional segue, Wilson, because we need to talk about what Lane Kiffin has next on his plate. I did want to note, looking at SEC bowl games, it's funny. Alabama plays Oklahoma in the playoff. Other than that game, LSU is the only SEC team that is an underdog in its bowl game, which is interesting. All SEC teams are favored. Missouri over Virginia in the Gator Bowl, Tennessee over Illinois in the Music City, Vandy over Iowa in the ReliaQuest, Texas over Michigan in the Citrus, as you mentioned. Then Mississippi State gets into a bowl game. They're favored over Wake Forest in the Mayo Bowl. So interesting. As for LSU, if you don't want to be arguing Texas versus Gator versus Music City next year, which I think is what they want to do, the portal is going to be the next big thing. We mentioned Lane Kiffin's got 2 staff spots to fill, so there's a few housekeeping things that need to be done. He needs a quarterback. He needs offensive line help. I mean, this is where the focus turns now.
That's right. Because you brought back most of your defensive staff, you've also got some defensive pieces now that you can probably build around. Like, I think there's some confidence that LSU can get Weeks back. And if you get him back in the middle of your defense, then you start to build out from there. On the defensive side, I think they're probably still going to go for 3, maybe 4 defensive linemen, because you've got a lot of young guys in there now, and you need some experience. You got they probably need a linebacker after West Weeks is exhausted his eligibility. You need somebody there right in the middle. You need a strong middle linebacker. You need a safety. AJ Halsey's exhausted his eligibility, and there's nobody else who, unless Deshaun Spears is ready to take a step forward to be a starter alongside probably Tamarcus Cooley, who can come back. Like, you need another safety. I'll be interested to see if they go after a corner or not, because Mansour Lane is, of course, moving on after his senior year, but you've got DJ Pickett and PJ Woodland there on the outside that LSU feels good about. You've got some other young corners who we haven't seen as much out of, but maybe they're ready to go ahead and take a step forward. So that's defense. And I think what that lets you do, though, is, okay, so we're talking about maybe 5 to 7 defensive transfers. Whereas last year that number was a little bit higher. You need a lot of guys who could come in and start right away on the defensive side. A long transition to say you probably can spend most of your money on offense, which is good because you're going to need a quarterback, which is going to be expensive. And you need a premium one who can come in and start right away. And you might need 2 in order to have enough bodies in the room to have a little bit of depth. And then you need a whole bunch of offensive linemen. Even if LSU's young offensive linemen like Carius Kern and even like Tyree Adams and some of these others are ready to come in and play, like Braylon Moore is probably going to return, so maybe you don't need to go get a center. You can't count. I think you need to go and you need to get some experience. You need to get some guys who can come in and play right away and compete for those spots, and then create competition and see who wins. And those are going to be expensive, especially if you need to go to get a tackle, which you need to go get a tackle. So, and then you probably need a couple of receivers. You need a big-bodied running back. You need a tight end. We're talking about, 10 transfers on offense, something like that, maybe. I mean, I don't know exactly what my math was just there, but
a lot.
It's a lot, and they're premium positions too, so it's going to be pricey.
It all has to start with the quarterback, Rab. I mean, budget-wise, importance-wise, everything has to be who is going to be under center next year.
Yeah, Garrett Nussmeier is leaving. We don't know exactly what's going on with Colin Hurley, Michael Van Buren. Sounds like he would like to come back, but does the new staff have the faith in him to be that guy that they could develop in next year? I think they need. I agree with Wilson. I think they need 2 quarterbacks probably out of the portal because they couldn't get. It was Landon Duckworth, right? They tried to flip from. He ended up signing with South Carolina where he was long time committed.
So now back-to-back years in high school recruiting without a quarterback,
right? And that's the position you can find someone. Obviously, look at what Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss did this year. What we find in Trinidad Chambliss certainly raises very interesting possibilities. Could someone follow him from Ole Miss, like Austin Simmons?
Trinidad Chambliss, if he gets a waiver.
Yeah, he gets a waiver.
Year.
Obviously, Sam Levitt is a big name. He's saying he's going to transfer.
I believe he entered the portal this morning. Okay. Sam Levitt did.
Okay,
yeah.
so Lane Kiffin has made some big splashes with keeping Blake Baker and obviously with the recruits they were retained. This is the next test. You got to find a now. Trinidad Chambliss came from Division II. He's shown an ability to develop quarterbacks for just taking somebody. There's a pumpkin and we're gonna make it into a coach. So maybe you can do that with just about anybody. But it would be nice for LSU if they could make a big splash and land one of these big time quarterbacks. Because, like I said, I think they need someone who's willing to come and be the starter and someone who's willing to be the backup.
Well, I trust Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss based on their track record to be able to do that. I mean, he's had some highly productive quarterbacks, if not necessarily like elite talent level, like I think of Matt Corral. Not necessarily like an elite talent, but they did good things with him. And then, I mean, Jackson Dart ends up being a first-round pick for the Giants.
Who would have thought that?
Right.
Could be Rookie of the Year, yeah.
And then... And then obviously what they did with Trinidad Chambliss coming in. I mean, that's one of the great stories in college football this year is Trinidad going from Division II Ferris State to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss might not have fully understood what it had until he started playing, but he's had a great season. And so you've got a track record here of productive quarterback play. And I trust them to go out and find somebody else to be able to come in and do some pretty good things next year. I don't know if we're talking about a Heisman winner or anything, but I think that they'll be able to find somebody in the portal who fits their system and is able to run this offense as long as they have everything else around that quarterback too.
To the point of Ole Miss transfers, whether it be a quarterback or anybody else that Lane Kiffin wants to try to get to follow him to Baton Rouge, the timeline here is interesting. The transfer portal opens January 2nd. Ole Miss plays its first playoff game against Tulane on December the 20th. Big favorites in that one. If they were to win that one, they play in the Sugar Bowl, which is the evening of January 1st against Georgia. So then obviously if they win that, they're still playing when the portal opens. But even if they were to lose to Georgia for the second time, it's the very next day that portal opens. So that's kind of setting the scene here.
And you've got about, what is it? It's January 2nd to the 16th.
So you have time.
There's plenty of time there for guys to enter. There'll be a flurry of activity when that thing opens because you're already seeing a lot of guys kind of at lower levels of college football already sort of saying that they're entering the portal. We've even had 2 LSU wide receivers saying that they're going to enter the portal when that happens. These things are already starting to take place. Conversations are already happening behind the scenes. And so there will be guys who are ready to hit the portal as soon as their season ends.
But not key players for LSU entering the portal so far. That's another job where they've done a good job of holding that together. I think Frank Wilson and the remaining staff deserve a lot of credit for holding the team together and hold the recruiting class and the team.
Well, we'll see what that looks like when they start to bowl practice. To bowl practices because the team hasn't really been doing anything the past couple weeks. You got finals going on and all of that. Once they start practicing for the bowl game, it'll be interesting to see what the roster looks like. And you might be able to start to get an idea at that point of, okay, who's opting out, who's declaring early for the draft, who's ready to enter the transfer portal. I have an interesting question for Mr. Alexander, if I may.
Absolutely.
If I may, Your Honor. Objection.
Is there? He's already objecting. I haven't asked my question yet. I think people want to know. Do you think there's any chance we see Garrett Nussmeier play in the Texas Bowl?
I would be shocked.
You would be shocked. Okay.
Yeah. Do you think Michael Van Buren plays?
Yes.
Okay. So he's likely your starting quarterback at this point.
He wants to show Lane Kiffin what he's got.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think he definitely wants to play.
All right. So we are hoping, I'm not going to be able to reach the table here to knock on wood, that maybe the football news will slow down just for a little bit here before we get toward the bowl and the transfer portal. So
wishful thinking.
I'm thinking that we will probably have a basketball-centric show later this week. We really have not given enough attention to LSU's women's basketball team, certainly, but also the men until the other day playing very well, too. So we may pivot and do that, but we will certainly be back with more football news later in the month here on the LSU Sports Insider. Until then, our producer today was Robert Young. He's Wilson Alexander, Scott Rabelais. I'm Zach Ewing, and thank you for watching.